Hey there, it's Max from RealLife English, and today we're gonna get into the topic of asking questions in English. Because most of the times when learners think about questions, they mainly think about grammar. You know, it's that formula: auxiliary verb plus subject pronoun plus main verb, or WH question word plus auxiliary plus pronoun plus main verb. That's great, and that's absolutely necessary if you ask me, but once you have a good grasp of the basics for asking questions in English, you should not forget that there is a whole other aspect that you need to get serious about if you want to really keep improving your fluency. That other aspect is, well, you'll find out after the intro. Alright, that other aspect is the phonetics, the pronunciation. More specifically, I'm talking about connected speech, which is how native English speakers cut and link their words, reduce others, and basically how they make their speech flow in a natural way. That's connected speech. Now, what you're going to do is sound a little bit less like as if you're speaking while thinking about these grammar strategies in your head, and make your speech flow in a more natural way. That's what you want to do. That's connected speech. So now I'm going to take an example, a sentence, and I'm going to say it without connected speech first, and then with connected speech, so you can see the difference, you can compare. So without connected speech, this sentence would be: she has read a lot of books about cooking. Now, with connected speech, she has read a lot of books about cooking. She has read a lot of books about cooking. Can you see what the difference is? It's pretty obvious, right? In the second example, there's a lot of linking, reduction. Some words are not fully pronounced, and not every syllable is stressed. Some are unstressed. Okay, so that's connected speech. With practice, you can master connected speech, and that will revolutionize your English in a relatively short period of time. My piece of advice is that in order to revolutionize your English, start by improving the way you ask questions. Learn how to ask questions like a native English speaker. You may not be able to speak like a native English speaker all the time. I can't. But you can totally ask questions like a native English speaker. That's totally possible. And that's what this lesson is for. We're going to go through different questions in a wide variety of tenses. And what I want you to do is listen, mimic my pronunciation and intonation as well, and repeat. Repeat and repeat. Repetition is key. It's only with repetition that you can assimilate all these weird new muscle movements that happen inside your mouth and that probably don't exist in your native language. Through listening and mimicking, you shape your articulators, that's your tongue, your lips, and through repetition, you train them to get used to these new movements of the English language. Once you get to that point, repetition becomes muscle memory. And it's muscle memory what's going to allow you to relax a lot more and to speak in a much more natural and fluent way. Once you get to that point, people are going to start saying that your English is amazing, and their native English speakers probably won't believe that you're not a native English speaker. So there you have it. This technique, muscle memory through mimicking and repetition, might be your best shot at maximizing your oral fluency.
Alright, so we're going to go through a lot of questions, but before that I just want to quickly touch upon some very basic concepts. Depending on where you're at in your learning process, you might or might not have heard of stress. About that, keep in mind that stress plays a big part in the mastering of questions, but I'm gonna get into that in another lesson. As for now, just focus on mimicking. Also, accept the fact that some words will sound quite differently from the way you think they should sound. For example, in context, have might be pronounced of or even just We're gonna call that reduction. When reduction takes place in speech, vowel sounds tend to be either dropped or reduced to schwa. So for example, do becomes da. And in the same way, consonant sounds are dropped or not fully articulated. So for example, and becomes or just So now that we know that, let's get to the questions. This is our first one. If you fully pronounced each word, this question is, what do you want? That's probably how you pronounced it when you were just starting to learn English, but then you realize that that's not actually how you're supposed to speak, right? So you should go, what do you want? What do you want? Sorry, what do you want? Note that sometimes that final T is not finalized. That's called a stop T. Your tongue gets in the position to articulate a T sound, but the airflow coming from your lungs is stopped. It's a half articulation. So you go one instead of want. So that final T sound It's not happening. The same rule applies for the T in what. So you have what versus what. Both of them are perfectly fine, but you'll find that in connected speech, the version where the T gets softened is much more frequently used. What do you want? What do you want? Even faster, see how that schwa sound is left out? So here the D hooks onto that ya sound. So now we have 3 syllables. What do you want? What do you want to do? What do you want to watch? What do you want? Water or juice? What do you want? Next up, what does he do? This is pronounced, what does he do? What does he do? Notice how I say E instead of he. It's very common that the pronouns he, her, him drop that H sound. This again goes back to the reduction I mentioned before. We drop that H consonant and it's just E. And that Z sound links with E. What does he do? Now, what did they do to you? 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 What did you do today? What did you do today? What did you do today? Let's focus on this word for a little bit. If you pay attention, in connected speech, today is often pronounced today with a D sound instead of today with a T. Why does this happen? Again, reduction. Reduction here means that T is reduced to a D. This is fairly common in words that are accentuated on the second syllable. For example, the word tomorrow, you hear native speakers say tomorrow, where the first syllable is reduced to a barely perceptible D plus schwa syllable, tomorrow. For example, I'm not gonna do it today, I'm gonna do it tomorrow, or the goodbye, see you tomorrow. Another example, remember. Remember? Do you remember the first day of school? Here the first syllable has dropped almost any trace of the consonant quality of the R sound. It's just a schwa, and even sometimes not even a schwa. The syllable is just completely omitted. Another example would be the word another, because the first syllable is not accentuated, it is the second one where the stress falls on. So it's sometimes you hear people say just another, and even people write another, missing that A letter in the beginning. Or for example, because, people sometimes just say, for the purpose of economics of the language, people sometimes say just cause. And this has made its way into writing as well. So as the word today is stressed on the second syllable, T is reduced to a D sound. And as we saw with the other examples as well, sometimes even to a schwa, or even just dropped altogether. So back to the question, what did you do today? What did you do today? Or even another version, a faster one, what did you do today? What did you do today? What did you do today? Hey man, you've gone missing, what did you do today? But we're gonna get into the mechanics of that one later on in this video. Next question, this one is more difficult than when it looks. What does that mean? A lot of learners put the word does and that at the same level in terms of intonation. To fix that, keep in mind that the word that is more important than does. So listen how I pronounce it. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't say what does that mean, because that would be giving does the same intonation and emphasis that that has. So repeat, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Alright, moving on. What are you going to do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's a pretty well known phenomenon that going to often turns into gonna in speech. Also, it's worth noting that native speakers and learners alike tend to omit the auxiliary verb are. When this happens, people sometimes say, what you gonna do tonight? What you gonna do, man? That T in what turns into a ch sound when it's before a Y sound. That's why when we say got you, meaning we understood what the other person said, we sometimes say, or most of the time we say gotcha, gotcha. So we have that T followed by a Y, and these two sounds morph into a ch sound, gotcha. But keep in mind that this type of pronunciation is rather informal, colloquial, so you might want to avoid it in formal situations. Okay, there's still a lot more questions and pronunciation tips we need to go through, but I'm gonna save those for the second part of this video. I suggest that if by the time you watch this video, the second part is already out, go check it out. The second part of this video has a lot of golden nuggets you don't want to miss out on. Alright, RealLifers, thanks for watching and see you next time.